What is up, everyone? Good morning. I'm JDM, aka Josh David Miller, aka J Doom, aka the Shredder of Business Models. And I am here every single Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, to answer whatever questions you have about startups and go-to-market and traction. We've got some great things to talk about today. We've got some prototyping to talk about. We've got some traction things to talk about. We've got mentorship to talk about as well. So we've got a lot of really good things. As always, I'm going to start with a question. And so I'm really curious, what is your biggest obstacle right now? Like, what is it that you're facing? You got this roadblock, there's a wall in front of you, you're pounding your head against it, can't seem to make forward progress, maybe because maybe it's not a huge thing, maybe it's a little thing, but what is it right now that's standing in front of you? What's your biggest obstacle? Super curious about that. Let me know. And before we move on to the questions for today, little quick announcement here. So I have a weekly newsletter for those of you who are on my list. Thank you so much for being a subscriber, by the way. And I'm moving it. It's been on Wednesdays since late last year, and I'm moving it to Mondays. That's just going to work a little bit better with my schedule. So there was no edition this Wednesday, but there will be one coming out on Monday, all about actually a little bit about mentorship and why I do that and all of that coming up. So if you are curious about that, want to sign up, you can hit this link down here in the corner. And I got some cool stuff coming up on their plan for the next few weeks. So all about traction, all about how to find traction. So cool. So with that having been said, let's move on to a question that I got. Usually I'm answering questions from startup founders, and this time I'm answering a question from an event organizer. And so the question is, what makes a good mentor for a startup? That's the question here. What makes a good mentor for a startup? And so I'm hoping that those of you out there who are community builders and organizers maybe get some value out of this, but also maybe startups or people who are thinking about becoming a mentor themselves, what you might be looking for in something like that or how you might do that. So let's talk about it a little bit. I think the biggest thing that that I think about when okay, yes, there's obvious stuff. You obviously should have some familiarity with the space, with how startups work, with process, with technologies, with what success has looked like, probably some entrepreneurial experience yourself, although there are some exceptions to that. So there's all the obvious stuff. Let's talk about the non-obvious stuff in looking for a mentor. So somebody just defined a mentor to me years ago, and I don't remember who or where, but it's kind of stuck with me, is that a mentor kind of does three things. The first thing that a mentor does is that they answer questions, and that's the obvious one. So, somebody's working on something and they're thinking about it and they go, okay, well, how do I do this? And, a mentor sometimes has answers for something like that, but mentors don't have all the answers. And that leads us to the second thing that mentors do, which is they provide resources. So this could be that, let me connect you with somebody, here's a book on whatever, or somebody told me about this, and just providing general resources, just saying, like, here's something that might help you on your journey that I'm offering in the hopes that'll be successful. So that's the second thing. So answer questions and provide resources. The third one is the non-obvious one, which is the one I want to spend a second talking about. And that is that they remove obstacles. So alongside, particularly on the entrepreneurial journey, but probably along any journey, we encounter obstacles. We smack our heads into the wall and we get stuck. Like there's nothing we can do, or at least it feels like there's nothing we can do. And what a really good mentor is really good at doing is removing those obstacles. And what the way that they're able to do that as a mentor is that most of the obstacles that we encounter along the way are to a greater or lesser degree self-imposed. They're obstacles that actually come from us. They're not something that's out there in the marketplace. They come from us, even if they seem like they're kind of out there. And so you could run into an obstacle that says something like, I think we talked about this a few shows ago when we talked about no-win scenarios and we can't have thinking, but you could have an obstacle out there that's like, okay, well, I need to do this. That takes money. Money takes investors. I don't have investors, and I'm not having any luck getting investors. Therefore, I'm stuck, right? And that's a self-imposed obstacle because you've put a constraint on yourself that said, I have to get this thing done, and this thing requires investment, and therefore I need investors. And all three of those are three obstacles that you've put in your way, and those that may be the that is the quote best path for you at that moment. But as soon as it becomes difficult, or as soon as it becomes unavailable, that constraint has to be something that we set aside. And a really good mentor will help you process through that and see that there is an obstacle that you've put in your path, and that there are ways of getting around that particular obstacle. And some of the obstacles too are not quite so direct, not something like I can't do A because of B. They can be something that's in our head. There's something that I talk about all the time, and I phrase it different ways, but my favorite recent way of phrase this is perfection is evil. Perfect is evil. And the idea there is that when we're trying to get something done, trying to put something out to market, we will oftentimes have a target of perfect. And even if it's kind of subconscious, even if we're not saying like, I need this to be perfect, we feel that way because we have this internal barrier that's telling us, I'm not ready to put this out until this is good, until this is good enough, which by the way, has no definition. And that's the obstacle. So we spend forever in our heads, we spend forever at our keyboards, and we spend no time out in front of customers, which is the only place you find traction. But that came from this little obstacle that we had put ourselves in our own way of the obstacle of perfect. So it's really important if you are, encountering any difficulty to recognize what your own obstacles are. And the role of a really good mentor is to me like at least a third of identifying what those obstacles are and then helping you process through those to try to find perhaps some alternatives for it, or at least helping you recognize that you're banging your head against this wall, but if you take 3 steps to the left, there's no wall there at all. And that could be extraordinarily valuable. So just wanted to, that was kind of my generic answer to that. So to recap, a really good mentor, particularly for startups, is, someone who can answer questions because they have the relevant background and experience, even if it's, sort of tangential or parallel. They can provide resources. So they're connected in a way to other things in the ecosystem, organizations, people, books, worksheets, sometimes like whatever. And then third, that they're able to identify, recognize, and remove obstacles that are just standing, directly in your way. Or as John's putting it in the chat, break out of the shell, right? You can trap yourself in that shell, and you want to find your way out of that for sure. And that's where if I come back to the question I asked at the top, what is your biggest obstacle right now? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious. And I'm not saying I'm your mentor. That would be a very bold thing of me to say, but we can try to crowdsource this together. So let me know down in the comments, what is your biggest obstacle right now? And I will do my best to provide, an alternative to something like that. So great. So that's that. As you guys know, if you've been watching for a little while, I've been going through over the last 6 episodes of this live show, the principles that I live by when helping startups find traction, which is what I do for a living. And so we've been doing this for 6 weeks. There are 7 principles, which means today's the last one. Today is the last of the 7 traction principles. So I'm going to actually run through them all real quick, and then we're going to talk about being biased toward action, or what I also say as momentum wins. So without further ado, let's kind of dive in. I just got my usual little visual here for this. So principle number 1 was maintaining a model. And the basic idea here is that you can't know where you're going until you say, this is where we're going. This is what we want to look like in X period of time. So you have to maintain a model of where you're going. If you understand this is where I think I'm going, then you can not only compare yourself to the future and say, am I on the right track? But you can also compare yourself to yesterday and say, am I doing better today than I did yesterday? But if you don't hold up a model as this is the thing we're trying to do, doesn't matter. You'll never get there at all. What gets measured is what improves. So second is, once you have that model, you have to understand what in that model do you know, what do you think you know, and what do you know that you don't know at all? Or as we like to say, separate fact from conjecture. So you got to say, these are things that I need to actually go and learn, because if I don't, I'm just stacking up all of my assumptions. But then once you have that, then you have to say, okay, there's all these unknowns, there's all these different levers that I can pull. The one lever that I want to pull is the one that's going to have a big impact today. Because a really big mistake that founders make is they try to fix things that, while they're right, will need work. They'll need work eventually. This is things like, let me try to up my retention before I have any customers to retain. Doesn't make any sense. So relentlessly focus on what's having an impact right now, today. It's the only thing that matters. And then fourth, the way that you do that is usually to be testing something. You're testing something with real customers all the time. If it's in your head, it doesn't count. You want to always be testing something in the market. And my favorite way of doing testing is by prototyping, which is going to come back here in a second. And you can prototype anything. You can literally prototype anything. I've prototyped software, obviously. I prototyped services. I prototyped physical products. I prototyped communities. I prototyped services. You can prototype anything and get really rapid feedback from real customers in real time. It's amazing. And it dramatically increases your chances of startup success. Literally from like 95% failure down to like 18% failure. It's ridiculous if you prototype and iterate. And then you want to proportion your effort to the event. So when you think about making one of these prototypes or running one of these tests, you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. You don't want to go all in, right? When you see just view your first cards. You want to actually say, okay, this is what I know. This is how much effort this is worth right now. And then you put in the effort that's proportional to the amount of evidence you have. If you have a lot of data, great. You can put in maybe a little bit more effort. Doesn't mean you should, but at least you have license to. You have reason to believe that effort might pay off. But if you only have a little bit of data, if you're just saying, I have this crazy cockamamie scheme, and so it's a wild ass guess, then you definitely need to say, okay, I have a little data, so I'm going to put in a little effort, get some new data back. With each data you acquire, you can increase your the size of your bet. And then lastly, we have, and this is today's, to be biased toward action, or the idea of momentum wins. And the idea here is, and this is like a big mistake that a lot of founders make. It's perfectly psychological, and it's not something that you can clearly identify as like, this is the thing. But the idea is that you really have to be focused, right, on doing. We have a tendency when we're doing something innovative, when we're doing something new, to think a lot about it, to try to process deeply and understand and hypothesize and theorize and say, I think this is the thing. And then we process endlessly this thing that we think our customers are, and here's all these factors about them, and we work for months and months and months and months just thinking. And thinking is not doing. And that's not to say that thinking isn't necessary at all, but thinking isn't doing. And as soon as we start conflating thinking and doing is when we start to lose. And so because what we're doing is actually stalling the eventual acquisition of data. We're wrong about things, and we're going to get data eventually. Why would we get it in the future when we can get it now? And so you always want to have this default position of doing. So when you encounter a decision and you feel like you don't have enough information, and you feel like, okay, we need to process and think about this a little bit more, don't. Be biased toward doing. Actually take the time to just go out into the marketplace and do something and get data back. Again, it's a small bet. It's okay, right? I'm not telling you to spend 2 years of life trying to build a thing that you don't know if anybody wants. I'm saying take an hour and build a little prototype and go out and talk to customers and get actual data back and learn today, as opposed to at some generic point in the future. So always, always, always be biased toward action. Or as I like to say, momentum wins. When you're working on something, the winner is going to be the one with the most momentum. Thinking is stalling momentum. Momentum only occurs out in the marketplace. It does not occur inside your head. Good morning, Chuck. Nice to see you here as well. And John's talking about his mentor there. His best mentor is dedicated to getting people out of their ruts. Yeah. Exactly. Yes, that's totally true. Mine too. And so that's why I have a special affinity for that idea of obstacles. So we have those two things. The next thing that I want to talk about, and I've mentioned this briefly before, but it is nigh on us. It's coming up soon. Is that I have a new prototyping cohort program that's kicking off in a couple of weeks. And the basic premise of this is we're going to take 30 days together. And we're going to rapidly test whatever it is that you're working on. We'll find the quickest way to prototype it together. And then you're going to put that test out into market, and you're going to get data back. And then we're going to do it 4 times. And so I'm going to teach you how to prototype, what prototyping is, all the different ways that you can prototype everything from products to services to apps to communities to whatever it is that you want to build. Prototype anything. Here's all the different ways that you can do that, the mechanisms. We're going to talk about how you actually get those in front of customers and what that conversation process looks like. We're going to talk about how you interpret the data that you get back and how that leads to more iterations. We're going to do all of that over 30 days, starting in October and ending in the middle of November. It's going to be a great deal of fun. It's going to be a lot of work, frankly, but it's going to be a lot of work that's fun. And this program here is sponsored by the Sacramento Metro Business Center, my friends over there. So this is actually completely free. Which is amazing. And so we're going to open applications officially sometime in the next couple of days. But if you hit up here, you can get your name on the email address, and I will personally reach out to you and let you know that that we are taking applications. So there's an application process just to make sure that we're getting people who are a good fit for the program. But again, totally free because it is sponsored. And with that, I'm going to kind of close that a little early. The last two have been a bit long here, so I'm going to give you back some time. As I guess with corporate speak, I'm going to give you back some time. But I'm here every single Thursday, so I'm going to be right back here next Thursday, October 6th. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear them. You can throw them at me right here, and you can record a video, you can write some text, you can record some audio. And if you do video or audio, I will probably play it right here for everybody to hear. So if you have any questions, let me know. I love answering you guys' questions. Kind of my favorite thing to do around here. And remember that I really want to know what's a big obstacle that you're working on right now in whatever it is you're working on, your business or organization or whatever. Drop that down in the comments and let's crowdsource together some ways around that obstacle. Sounds like a lot of fun. So again, thank you so much. Have a fantastic rest of your week and a good weekend. And I will see you guys next week. Until then.